Welcome back to Startups Discipleship. We are in week 4 of track 5 in our practical branch, and we're talking about leadership lessons. Today we're talking about adaptability. Prior to getting into full-time ministry, I worked in the animation industry, and there really is no higher standard in animation than Pixar Animation Studios. There's a really interesting video essay on YouTube about the differences in stories that Disney tells and the stories that Pixar tells. Most often in a Disney movie, the main character desires more. Belle wants more than her provincial life. Ariel wants more than life under the sea. Rapunzel wants more than her view from the tower. Moana wants more than what she knows of her island. Even in the more recent Wreck-It Ralph series, Vanellope has longed for more than life in her arcade. On and on and on and on. This is the overall theme of Disney films. Give me more than what I already have. Pixar, however, tells stories where dramatic change is happening and the main characters have to learn how to adapt. And it's usually by changing themselves. Buzz shows up on Andy's bed and Woody needs to change his attitude and his actions to become a better leader and a better friend. Monstropolis discovers that laughter is more powerful than screams. But is the old school ownership willing to change when a better resource is found, or are they just stuck in their ways? Carl Fredricksen loses the love of his life in the opening scene of Up. Does he remain a crotchety old man and hold on to his routine life, or does he grow and change and help a young wilderness explorer scout who doesn't have a father figure? Riley from Inside Out is moved across the country, leaving everything that she knew and loved. Friends? Gone. Hockey? Gone. Her old house? Gone. Pixar almost exclusively tells stories about how we deal with dramatic change. How do we adapt? I believe that this is because they understand the need to adapt arguably better than any other company around. Because it's all they've known for roughly 40 years. They've constantly been innovating, problem-solving, reworking, reimagining, and adapting in an industry that's experienced dramatic change since its foundation. It's funny because their protagonists in Pixar films resist change. They fight against it until they finally realize it's inevitable. And then they decide to change themselves rather than change their circumstances or cling to the past. In the book Creativity Inc., there's an entire chapter devoted to change and randomness. In that chapter, a brilliant illustration is given regarding how most of us handle change. Ed Catmull says it's like playing musical chairs. I quote, "We cling as long as possible to the perceived safe place that we already know, refusing to loosen our grip until we feel sure that there's another safe place awaiting." I love this illustration because most of us have seen this play out in real time. When playing a game of musical chairs, people hover over the chair while the music plays because it's safe. And those spaces in between chairs are terrifying because change is happening. Movement is happening. And that's really what we all want. We want movement in our leadership. We want movement in our churches. We want movement in our organizations. We want movement in our teams. And if movement, if life, if progress is really what we're going for, then we do have to loosen our grip on those safe places, realize that change happens. And rather than fear it or avoid it, we can prepare for it by becoming flexible and adaptable. Change is inevitable. If we're honest with ourselves, there is no amount of planning that could prepare us for every possible outcome. Planning is good. In fact, I think it's great. Preparation is great. But unforeseen things can and will happen, and they do not necessarily mean that it was anyone's fault. Oftentimes when something goes wrong within an organization, everybody's looking to place the blame somewhere, but random things happen all the time. The weather changes, tires go flat, accidents happen. And rather than live our lives in fear of change or even trying to prepare for every possible outcome, we should embrace change and use it to better our leadership and our organization. Creativity Inc. also states, if all our careful planning cannot prevent problems, then our best method of response is to enable our employees at every level to own the problems and to have the confidence to fix them. In essence, our job as leaders is not to safeguard our people from potential problems, but to empower those we lead to solve them. This means training those we lead well by teaching them to think critically. This means resourcing others with tools that are needed to see issues and to solve problems. This means not needing to be the only person with decision-making power as a leader. It means giving other people decision-making power and not needing to micromanage every decision. Too many leaders and organizations are paralyzed with the fear of change. What if something happens? What if I hand this project off and it doesn't get completed correctly? What if they don't do it the way that I would do it? Steve Jobs, the founder of Apple, was quite aware of how problematic this type of leadership was, and he never wanted people to ask, what would Steve do? Because he believed no one ever achieved creative success by simply clinging to what used to work. Additionally, being adaptable and learning how to solve problems on the fly, and then teaching and empowering our teams to be adaptable and solve problems on the fly, exponentially strengthens our chances of success. Again, one more quote from Ed Catmull in Creativity Inc. He states, "If we allow more people to solve problems without our permission, and if we tolerate and not vilify their mistakes, then we enable a much larger set of problems to actually be addressed." Frankly, there's only so much one person can do. There's only so much you can do as the leader. You only have so much time in a day. You can only solve so many problems. You can only address so many issues. But as a team, if they are equipped and empowered and free to solve problems on behalf of your organization, then it frees you up to focus on the things that really matter, which is equipping and leading, strategizing and planning. Change is inevitable. Random issues are unavoidable. Stuff happens. The question is not whether or not you will ever encounter a sudden issue. The question is, how will you adapt when you do? Now, look, I know this has largely been abstract principles, kind of life philosophies at this point. And a lot of the times I try to give you practical things that you can do. But realistically, different startups are going to face dramatically different circumstances and changes and randomness. Pet rescue is going to face dramatically different issues than a coffee shop will or than a furniture refurbishment center will. And so there's really no way to give you tangible methods that you can put into practice. But I do have a way that you can practice problem solving and adaptability under pressure. This is going to sound kind of ridiculous, but it's something that I did with my kids and that I actually do on a regular basis. Play a game. I love playing games with my kids like Dr. Mario or Tetris. If you've never played Tetris before, it's basically a puzzle that happens with a timer. Different geometric shapes fall from the top of the screen to the bottom, and your job is to piece them together. And if you do it correctly, you're rewarded. And if you do it incorrectly, it's game over. What I love about Tetris, two things. One, you have no control and no way of predicting what shape is coming down next. It's change and randomness in real time. And secondly, is the timer of the blocks of the geometric shapes falling from the top of the screen to the bottom adds a pressure situation that causes you to have to think quickly and solve problems with speed and efficiency. When my girls were little and we'd go to eat out at a restaurant, there were many times where they would panic when the waitress would come over to take our order. The need to make a decision in a timely manner caused their little hearts and minds to freak out. And so my solution? We need to go home and play Tetris. Because again, Tetris teaches us to make decisions in a time-sensitive, high-pressure environment. But there's also a safety to it. Because if you lose at Tetris, no big deal. Start over. And so I like to practice change and randomness. I like to practice adaptability in safe environments like video games. And it's not just Tetris. Dr. Mario is another great example. And even there's some apps on your phone that you can download that'll help with this exact skill development. Apps like Lumosity and Elevate have free versions, and these apps were developed to further brain health and cognitive skills. They have specific games that help you develop speed and memory and attention, problem solving, and flexibility. I made it a discipline to actually play games like these on a regular basis because it's a safe environment for me to practice problem solving and critical thinking skills in pressure situations. Because if I can learn and develop those skills in safe environments where the worst that can happen is a game over screen, then when I'm presented with these real life changes and random things that happen, when I'm presented with real problems and real issues, they won't feel so tense because it's something that I do on a regular basis. To wrap this whole thing up, healthy leaders and healthy organizations are not rigid, but flexible, malleable, adaptable. Their preparedness is not measured by how many contingency plans they have in place, but on how creatively they can solve the problems as a team as they arise. Be adaptable as a leader and equip your teams to be adaptable.